Hi, welcome to another week. Today I'm going to be presenting IMAPS and DNS. The topics being IMAPS with DevCot, DNS with IIS and bind, and hardening recommendations for both IMAPS and DNS. Here is an overview of the IMAPS protocol. So, Internet Message Access Control is a standard use for email retrieval for incoming protocols, and it allows for emails on the server to have organizations such as folders, flag messages, email urgencies, and the ability to save drafts on the server. It utilizes the default port 993, and IMAP allows secure access to emails stored on the mail server. Configuration of IMAPS with DevCot. Here is what you would want to do. You would want to install DevCot on Linux, then use the package manager, and then configure DevCot for IMAPS by editing the file and enabling IMAPS in the file. You can use nano, and you would set up SSL and TLS and specify the certification paths in DevCot's configuration. Here are some hardening recommendations for IMAPS. So you can use strong SSL and TLS settings and encryption protocols by making sure that IMAPS connections are using strong encryption protocols to protect data while it is in transit. You would also disable weak ciphers and protocols by editing the server's configuration files, and ensure that the mail server is enforcing the use of TLS 1.2 or higher and nothing lower than that. Regularly review and update the encryption settings to comply with the latest security standards to prevent unknown and known vulnerabilities on the software. And two, you can implement access controls. So the server should ideally restrict access to the IMAP services only to authorized users and devices only. Users must have strong unique passwords for all email accounts and enforce multi-factor authentications for added security. This protects against straight-up brute force attacks and restrict the access to IMAP services to trusted IP addresses only. Lastly, you can separate internal and external DNSs to prevent accidental leaks of internal information. My last recommendation for IMAPS would be to regularly update the software, so ensure that the latest security patches are applied. This ensures that the mail server and software and any underlying operating systems are up to date with security patches. The server should automatically update. It should automatically have automatic updates for the server, and you should have the team regularly make sure that everything is up to date and resolve vulnerabilities and update the team's security practices. DNS protocol overview. So, domain name system is a hierarchical and decentralized naming system that allows for humans to be able to read the names of the domains instead of using IP addresses. This is very useful and is an essential part of the internet, and enables users to easily remember the names of domains instead of long IP addresses. The default port used is port 53. DNS can operate in both UDP and TCP and is good for reverse DNS lookup. Configuration of DNS with LLS, so Windows. So you would install DNS server roles using the server manager. Then you would open the DNS manager and configure new zones and create a forward lookup zones for the domains. Lastly, you would set up the DNS to listen on the default port of 53. Now on Linux, configuring DNS with bind, you would install bind using the package manager. So apt-get install bind 9, and then you would configure bind by editing the file and defining your zones and records, and then you would ensure that bind is listening on the default port 53. Here are some hardening recommendations for the server's DNS. So you would enable domain name systems extensions. So DNSSEC will add a layer of security by enabling the DNS responses to be verified for authenticity. You would use zones at levels of security with different keys to make sure that the session is valid. Regularly changing the DNSSEC keys to maintain security and to have policies and procedures for key management. My second recommendation will be to have access controls and disable zone transfers. So this restricts who can access the DNS servers and will limit the information that can be transmitted to unauthorized parties. And the DNS server should be configured to only allow zone transfers to specific IP addresses. Access controls should utilize the use of firewall rules and access controls to restrict access to the DNS server by only allowing connections from trusted sources and limiting administrative access to only authorized users. My last hardening recommendation would be to keep everything up to date. Monitoring the DNS logs and keeping the DNS software up to date to protect against known vulnerabilities. And the logs will help with the review and monitoring of unusual or suspicious activities. And lastly, having intrusion detection and prevention systems will protect the DNS infrastructure from attacks such as DDoS and catch poisoning and other exploits. In conclusion of IMAPS, IMAP provides secure access and management of emails over the internet and keeps the communication between the client and the server encrypted. With the enhanced feature of SSL and TLS encryption, IMAP boosts confidentiality and the integrity of email messaging and protects users' data from breaches and potential eavesdropping. With the hardening recommendations and best practices being strong authentication, regular updates and monitoring, it helps protect the transmission of email messages across the server. In conclusion of DNS, DNS plays a fundamental role in the functionality of the internet and provides a user-friendly name by translating IP addresses into a more readable format. The importance of security is critical to the internet service by ensuring that the DNS infrastructure is protected against any threats such as spoofing, DDoS attacks, and catch poisoning, with some of the best practices for DNS being DNSSEC, access controls, and regular monitoring and updates significantly helps keep DNS secure. Last slide is going to be our references, and I've used several different websites to help gather all of my information. You can go and look at these if you'd like, and thank you for watching.